The station called Threshold floated in the darkness between stars. It was old, older than most species in the galaxy could remember. Its metal walls had seen 1,000 civilizations rise and fall. Its halls had heard the voices of conquerors and the silence of the conquered. Today, it would hear the voice of humanity for the first time. Ambassador Park walked through the long corridor toward the assembly chamber. Her footsteps echoed against the cold floor. Behind her walked three others, her small delegation, the only humans allowed on the station. They had traveled for 8 months to reach this place. 8 months in a small ship, crossing the empty void between Earth and the center of galactic civilization. Now they were here, and felt the weight of her entire species on her shoulders. "Ambassador," said her aide, a young man named. His voice was quiet. "The translator chip is working. I tested it 3 times." Touched the small device behind her ear. It hummed softly, ready to turn alien sounds into words she could understand. "Good," she said. "What about the presentation files?" "Ready," said her communications officer. She was carrying a small data device that held everything: records of human history, science, art, music. Proof that humanity deserved a place among the stars. The fourth member of their group said nothing. His name was, and he was security. He walked behind them with his eyes moving constantly, watching everything. He did not trust this place. He did not trust any place that was not Earth. They reached the great doors of the assembly chamber. The doors were tall, 20 meters at least, and made of some dark metal that seemed to drink the light. Strange symbols covered their surface. Did not know what they meant. The doors opened. The chamber beyond was vast. It stretched upward into darkness, and its walls curved like the inside of an egg. In the center was a raised platform where would stand. Around it, rising in tiers like an ancient theater, sat the representatives of 17 species. Had studied them all. She knew their names, their histories, their customs, but seeing them now in their true forms was different from looking at pictures. There was the delegate, a creature of wet skin and bulging eyes, like a frog the size of a bear. There were the beings with hard shells and clicking mandibles. There were creatures of pure light, beings made of living crystal, entities that seemed to exist only as shadows. And above them all, on the highest seat, sat the High Arbiter, the ruler of the assembly. His name was, and he was beautiful in a terrible way. His body was made of crystal that shifted colors as he moved, blue to purple to deep red. He had no face that could recognize, but she felt his attention on her like cold water. "You may approach," said. His voice came through her translator as something ancient and tired. "Species 7914. Designation: Human. You have requested recognition from the Galactic Assembly." Walked to the central platform. Her delegation stayed at the edge of the chamber. She was alone now, surrounded by aliens who looked at her the way a scientist might look at a strange insect. "I am Park," she said. Her voice was steady. She had practiced this moment 1,000 times. "Ambassador of Earth. I come representing 8 billion people who wish to join the galactic community as equal partners." A sound rippled through the chamber. It took a moment to realize it was laughter. The delegate spoke, his voice wet and bubbling. "Equal partners. The creature is amusing." "Silence," said. The laughter stopped. "We will follow proper procedure. The assessment will be read." A smaller crystal being floated forward, carrying what looked like a tablet of light. It spoke in a flat, emotionless voice. "Species 7914. Origin: Sol System, 3rd planet. Name: Human. Age of civilization: approximately 10,000 standard cycles. Technological level: Class 3. Capable of basic space travel. No faster-than-light capability developed independently." Wanted to interrupt. Humanity had only discovered faster-than-light travel after finding an ancient probe near Jupiter, but she stayed quiet. The assessment continued. Physical specifications: carbon-based bipedal organism. Average height 1.7 meters. Average weight 70 kilograms. Natural weapons none. Natural armor none. Sensory capabilities limited to narrow visual spectrum and basic audio range. Electromagnetic perception absent. Toxic resistance minimal. Regeneration capability negligible. Each word was like a small cut. Felt her hands tighten into fists at her sides. Average 80 standard cycles. Maximum recorded 122 cycles. Now there was real laughter. Heard it from several directions. The wet gurgling of the clicking of the strange sounds from beings she could not identify. 122 cycles, someone said. They die before they can learn anything. How do they even build civilization? Asked another. Their leaders must die before they finish any project. Raised a limb, and the chamber fell silent again. He looked down at with those eyes that were not eyes. The assessment is complete, he said. The Council has reviewed all data provided by the human delegation. We have made our determination. Held her breath. Species 7914, designation human, is classified as weak. The word hit her like a physical blow. Humans possess no natural advantages. They cannot survive in vacuum. They cannot breathe underwater. They have no venom, no claws, no protective shells. Their senses are poor. Their bodies are fragile. Their lives are brief. Paused. It would be cruel to allow such a species to face the dangers of the galaxy alone. Felt cold spreading through her chest. She knew what was coming. Therefore, continued, the Council recommends protectorate status. Humanity will be placed under the administration of the Dominion of. They will manage human affairs, protect human territories, and guide human development. This is for humanity's own safety. The delegate made a sound of satisfaction. Its mandibles clicked together in what might have been a smile. Looked back at her delegation. His face was pale, was gripping her data device so hard her knuckles were white. His expression had not changed, but his hand had moved closer to his weapon. Ambassador said, "Do you have any response?" Turned back to face the High Arbiter. She thought about all the things she had prepared to say, all the arguments about human achievement, the art, the music, the science, the fact that humans had walked on their moon using computers less powerful than a child's toy, the fact that they had cured diseases that should have killed them, the fact that they had built wonders and crossed oceans and never, ever stopped reaching for more. None of it would matter. These beings had already decided. They saw humans as small, weak, brief creatures who needed protection. So did not argue, she did not beg, she did not explain. She simply said, "We reject protectorate status." The chamber went completely silent. Leaned forward. Rejection is not an option. The Council has made its decision. This is protection, not punishment. Smiled. It was not a warm smile. You have made an assessment based on what we are. You have not considered what we do. You see short lives and fragile bodies. You do not see what those things have made us. And what is that? Asked. Smile grew thinner, sharper, desperate, determined, dangerous. She turned and walked toward the exit. Her delegation fell in behind her without a word. Ambassador called, "Where are you going?" Did not stop. She did not look back. "To show you," she said, "what weak really means." The great doors closed behind them with a sound like thunder. News traveled fast through the stars. Within hours of the assembly meeting, every species in the galaxy knew what had happened. The new species, the humans, had rejected protectorate status. They had walked out of the chamber. They had said no to the Council. Nobody said no to the Council. On the information networks, commentators discussed the situation with amusement. They called it pride. They called it stupidity. They called it the desperate action of a young species that did not understand how the galaxy worked. "They will learn," said one analyst on a popular broadcast. The humans will learn that the galaxy is not kind to those who stand alone. Give them time. They will come back and accept protection. They have no choice. But they did not want to wait. The Dominion of was old and powerful. They controlled 37 star systems, their ships numbered in the thousands. Their soldiers were born with natural armor and weapons built into their bodies. For centuries, they had protected weaker species and taken payment in resources, labor, and loyalty. The humans were supposed to be their addition, a whole planet of workers, a whole species to serve interests, and some small, fragile creature had said no. This could not be allowed. 6 days after the assembly meeting, 42 warships entered the Sol system. They came through the jump point near Jupiter, their massive forms blocking out the stars. Each ship was a mountain of dark metal, covered with weapons and sensor arrays. The smallest was 3 kilometers long. The largest was nearly 10. They called it a diplomatic escort. Everyone knew what it really was. On Earth, people looked up at the night sky and saw new lights moving among the stars. The news spread quickly, through phones, through screens, through word of mouth. Aliens were here, aliens with warships. Some people panicked. Some people prayed. Some people went about their normal business, refusing to believe what was happening. But most people simply waited. They had trusted their leaders to handle the situation at the assembly. Now they trusted their military to handle this. Fleet Commander received the news on the bridge of his ship, the Resolve. He was 53 years old, with gray in his hair and calm in his eyes. He had served in the Earth Defense Force for 30 years. He had trained for situations like this. He had never actually believed one would happen. "How many?" he asked his executive officer. Captain checked her display. She was younger than 40 years old, with sharp features and a sharper mind. She had been his second in command for 6 years. They understood each other without many words. 42 ships confirmed, she said. All warships, heavy weapons signatures. They're approaching in standard formation, 20 ships in front, 22 behind. Looked at the tactical display. The ships appeared as red dots, moving slowly toward Earth. Behind them, far behind them, was the edge of the solar system. In front of them was everything humanity had ever built. And our forces? Paused. 12 ships, sir. The Resolve, the Defiant, the Steadfast, and 9 others. That's everything we have. 12 against 42. Had done the math before. He did it again now. The answer was the same. "They're broadcasting," said the communications officer, a young woman named. "Standard surrender terms." "On screen," said. The main display flickered and a face appeared. It was compound eyes, clicking mandibles, antennae that twitched with each word. The creature wore something like a uniform, decorated with symbols that probably meant rank. "Human vessels," they said. "This is Overseer of the Dominion. You will power down your weapons and prepare for administrative transition. The Council has determined that your species requires protection. We are here to provide it. Resistance is not recommended. You have 6 hours to comply." The screen went dark. Stood in the silence of his bridge. His crew looked at him, waiting. Outside the viewports, Earth hung like a blue marble against the black. He thought about his daughter, Sara. She was 12 years old and she lived in with her mother. This morning she had sent him a message. "Dad, are the aliens really coming? Everyone at school is scared. But I told them my dad will protect us. You will, right?" He thought about his own father who had fought in a war 60 years ago. A small war between humans over things that seemed so unimportant now. His father had told him once, "A soldier does not fight because he hates what is in front of him. He fights because he loves what is behind him." Understood that now. He said quietly, "Open a channel to all ships, secure frequency." She nodded and worked her console. A moment later, 11 faces appeared on secondary screens, the captains of every ship in the human fleet. They looked scared. They looked young. They looked at like he had answers. "You've all seen the situation," said. 42 against 12. They want us to surrender. They want to take Earth under their control. They call it protection." He paused. "I call it something else." The captains waited. "I've received orders from command," continued. "We are not surrendering. Earth is not surrendering. 8 billion people have looked at the odds and decided that freedom is worth more than safety." He took a breath. "So we fight." "Sir," said one captain, a young man named, "with respect, how? Their ships are larger, faster, better armed. Their shields can take anything we have." "Maybe," said, "maybe not. We've been preparing for something like this since we first found out we weren't alone. We built weapons they don't know about. We developed tactics they won't expect. And we have something they don't." "What's that, sir?" Almost smiled. "We have nothing to lose. They want to take our home. They want to make us servants. If we lose everything anyway. So we might as well fight like it." He looked at each face on the screens. "I won't order any of you to die, but I'm asking you to stand with me, not for glory, not for victory, for the people behind us who are counting on us to try." One by one, the captains nodded. "What's the plan, sir?" asked. Turned to her. "Execute Protocol Sunrise." Her eyes widened slightly. Protocol Sunrise was something they had developed in secret, hoping they would never need it. It was desperate. It was dangerous. It was probably their only chance. Said, "Send a message to the fleet. Narrow beam encrypted, include coordinates and a timer, 30 seconds." The young officer looked confused, but she followed orders. Her fingers moved across her console. On the command ship, Overseer received a strange transmission. Just coordinates, a point in empty space between the two fleets, and a timer counting down from 30 seconds. Felt something he had not felt in many years. Curiosity. What were these humans doing? He watched the timer reach 0. Then space itself seemed to tear apart. The explosion was silent in the vacuum, but its light was blinding. A flash of pure white that lit up every sensor in both fleets. Energy readings went off the scale. For a moment, it looked like a new star had been born between them. When the light faded, there was nothing at the coordinates, just empty space and fatting radiation. On the bridge, officers scrambled to understand what had happened. Their instruments gave them impossible readings. The energy output was massive, enough to destroy a dozen ships, but there was no weapons signature they recognized. "What was that?" demanded. His science officer was shaking. "Unknown, Overseer, the energy pattern is primitive nuclear fusion, but the scale, it should not be possible." Stared at where the human ship sat calmly, waiting. A second transmission came through. This time it was video, the human commander, the old one with gray hair. "That was a warning," the human said. His voice was quiet, almost casual. "A small one, we have more. Bigger ones, you have our coordinates, you know where Earth is. But now you also know what happens if you come closer." He leaned forward, and something in his eyes made uncomfortable. "We don't want war," the human continued. "We just want to be left alone. Go home. Tell the council we're not interested in their protection. And maybe we can forget this happened." The transmission ended. Stood in the silence of his bridge, surrounded by officers who were waiting for orders. For the first time in his long career, he was not certain what to do. Behind him, through the human ships waited. 12 small vessels against 42 warships. They should have been terrified. They did not look terrified. The blast was visible from Mars. On the red planet's surface, a small research station had been watching the fleet approach. 23 scientists and engineers, living in metal boxes buried under Martian soil, trying to pretend that everything was normal. When the flash lit up the sky, they all stopped what they were doing. They gathered at the observation window and watched the distant light fade. "Was that us?" asked one of them, a geologist named. Nobody answered, nobody knew. But somewhere deep inside, they hoped it was. Across the solar system, humanity held its breath. On Earth, billions of people watched their screens, waiting for news. In orbital stations, workers stared out viewports at the distant pinpoint of light. On the moon, colonists gathered in common rooms and prayed to gods they had almost forgotten. The fleet had stopped. Every sensor could see it. 42 warships frozen in space, no longer advancing. "They're scared," whispered a child in Seoul, watching the news with her parents. Her mother squeezed her hand. "I hope so." On Threshold Station, the Galactic Assembly had been in session when the news arrived. The great chamber fell silent as sensor data flooded their displays. High Arbiter studied the readings with growing concern. The crystalline being had seen many things in his long life: wars, plagues, the death of stars. But he had never seen anything quite like this. "Explain," he said to his science advisors. "What did the humans do?" The advisors scrambled to analyze the data. It took them several minutes to form a coherent answer. "Nuclear fusion, High Arbiter. A controlled detonation of hydrogen isotopes." "Fusion?" sounded puzzled. "That is primitive technology, child's play. Every species masters fusion before they reach the stars." "Yes, High Arbiter, but—" the advisor hesitated. "The scale is wrong. The energy output was several hundred times larger than any fusion weapon we have on record. They have somehow enhanced the reaction beyond known parameters." The delegate leaned forward, his wet eyes blinking. "How is that possible? They are a Class 3 civilization. They should not have this capability." "They should not," agreed the advisor, "and yet they do." Was quiet for a long moment. He was thinking about the human ambassador, the small female who had stood before him and refused his protection. She had smiled when she left, a strange, sharp smile. "What else do we know about human weapons technology?" he asked. The advisors exchanged glances. "Very little, High Arbiter. The humans shared their cultural and scientific records freely, but their military data was limited. We assumed they simply had nothing worth hiding." Perhaps we assumed wrong. On the command ship, Overseer was having similar thoughts. He stood at the center of his bridge, surrounded by officers who were all looking to him for guidance. The tactical display showed the human fleet, 12 small ships, still holding position, still waiting. Was old. He had commanded fleets for over 300 cycles. He had conquered species that had been traveling the stars when humans were still living in caves. He had never retreated from a battle. But he had also never seen a weapon like the one the humans had just demonstrated. "Overseer," said his tactical officer, "the human weapon, our shields could not have blocked it. If that blast had hit our formation, we would have lost at least 8 ships, possibly more." "I am aware," said coldly. "And they say they have more, bigger ones." The tactical officer's antennae were twitching nervously. "Should we reconsider our approach?" Turned his compound eyes to the officer. The look was enough to silence him. "The do not retreat," said. "Not from primitives, not from anyone. They fired one weapon. One, they showed us everything they have." "Overseer, we don't know." "I know," interrupted. "I know that we have 42 ships, they have 12. I know that our empire spans 37 systems, they have one planet. I know that we have been conquering the galaxy for thousands of cycles. They discovered fire yesterday." He clicked his mandibles together. "One lucky weapon does not change mathematics. We will proceed." "And if they fire again?" Almost smiled, or at least made the expression that resembled a smile. "Then we will see if they can fire fast enough." He turned to the navigation officer. "All ships forward, standard assault formation, weapons hot." The fleet began to move. On the Resolve watched the tactical display change. The red dots were moving again, slowly at first but with clear purpose. "They're coming," she said quietly. Commander nodded. He had expected this. They were proud. They had been conquering for too long to accept anything that looked like weakness. Their overseer would rather lose ships than lose face. "How long until they're in weapons range?" he asked. 23 minutes at current speed. Looked around his bridge. His crew was young. Most of them had never seen real combat. They were scared. He could see it in their eyes, in the tension of their shoulders, in the way they gripped their consoles. But none of them had run. None of them had asked to leave. They were all still here, ready to do their duty. He was proud of them. "Open a channel to the fleet," he said. Nodded and worked her console. A moment later, he was speaking to all 12 ships. "This is Commander. They are advancing. They've chosen to ignore our warning." He paused. "I want you all to know something. I requested this mission. I volunteered our fleet for this position. I did it because I believed someone had to stand here. Someone had to be the line that the enemy does not cross." He looked out the viewport at Earth, blue and beautiful in the distance. "Behind us is everything we have ever known. Our homes, our families, our future. They think they can take it from us because they have more ships and bigger guns. They think we will surrender because we are small and weak and our lives are short." His voice hardened. "They are wrong. We are small, yes. We are weak compared to them. Our lives are brief. But those things do not make us less. They make us more. Because we know that every moment matters. Every life is precious. Every choice counts. We have walked through fire since we first stood upright. We have fought disease and disaster and each other. We have died by the millions and still kept going." He stood. "They have forgotten what that means. They have lived too long, won too easily. They see our short lives and think we have nothing to lose. They're wrong. We have everything to lose. And that is exactly why we will fight harder than they can imagine." He let the words hang in the air. "In a few minutes we will be in combat. Some of us will not survive. I cannot promise you victory, but I can promise you this. Whatever happens today, humanity will remember. 1,000 years from now, they will tell stories about the 12 ships that stood against an empire. They will remember our names. They will remember that when the galaxy called us weak, we answered with fire." He took a breath. "All ships, battle stations. May we make our ancestors proud." The channel closed. Around him, the bridge crew moved with new purpose. Fear was still there, it would always be there, but now it was mixed with something else. Determination, resolve. On the tactical display, the fleet grew closer. 10 minutes to weapons range," reported. Settled into his command chair. Sound general quarters, all hands to battle stations. Alarms began to wail throughout the ship. The sound was old. Humanity had used similar sounds for centuries, warning of danger, calling people to fight. It was in their blood now, part of their heritage. Closed his eyes for a moment. He thought about his daughter, about her message, about her faith in him. "I'll try, Sora," he whispered. "I promise I'll try." Then he opened his eyes, and his face became stone. 5 minutes, said. "All weapons online." "Yes, sir." "Shield generators." "Operating at full capacity." Nodded. "Then let's show them what weak really means." Outside in the darkness of space, 42 warships advanced toward 12 defenders. The stars watched in silence, ancient and uncaring. But somewhere on a small blue planet, 8 billion hearts were beating together. Humanity was not alone. The first shot of the battle came from the... A bright lance of energy crossed the void between the fleets, aimed at the human flagship. The Resolve shuddered as the blast hit her shields, but the shields held. "Minor damage to forward barrier," reported. "Regenerating now." "Return fire," said. "All batteries. Target their lead ship." The Resolve answered with everything she had. Missiles launched from her tubes. Energy weapons blazed from her ports. Kinetic rounds screamed across space at speeds that would vaporize armor on impact. Around her, the other 11 human ships did the same. The battle had begun. They were surprised by the ferocity of the human response. They had expected fear, hesitation, maybe even surrender attempts. Instead, they faced a wall of fire. The lead ship took multiple hits. Its shields flickered and held, but not easily. Warning lights flashed across its bridge as damage reports came in. "Overseer," said a tactical officer, "their weapons are more powerful than we expected. Our forward shields are at 62%. Watched the battle unfold on his display. The human ships were small, perhaps one-tenth the size of his warships, but they moved with speed and precision that his vessels could not match. "They are faster than us," he observed. "Yes, Overseer. Their ships have less armor, less weapons, but much better acceleration. They can outmaneuver our cruisers." Considered this. The humans had built ships for speed rather than strength. Interesting. "Continue the advance," he ordered. "All ships maintain formation. Concentrate fire on their largest vessel." 40 ships focused their weapons on the Resolve. The human flagship rocked under the assault. Her shields screamed with overload warnings. Fires broke out on 3 decks. The lights flickered and died, replaced by the red glow of emergency power. "Shields failing," shouted over the noise of alarms. "Hull breaches on decks 7 and 12. We're losing atmosphere." Gripped his command chair as the ship shook. "Seal those decks. Reroute power to forward shields. All other ships, break formation and engage at will." The order went out, and the human fleet scattered. This was the plan. The humans knew they could not match in a straight fight. Their shields were weaker, their weapons smaller, their ships more fragile, but they were faster and they had something else. They were willing to do things they would never expect. The Defiant, commanded by Captain, accelerated directly toward the formation. She was a small ship, barely half a kilometer long, but she moved like a missile. "Sir," said its navigator, "we're on collision course with the enemy cruiser." "I know," said calmly, "keep this heading." On the cruiser, officers watched in confusion as the tiny human ship grew larger in their viewports. "They're not stopping," someone said. "They must be damaged, lost control." "No," said the captain slowly, "they're ramming us." The Defiant hit the cruiser at full speed. The impact was catastrophic. Both ships crumpled like paper, their hulls tearing apart in a flash of fire and debris. But in the moment before impact, escape pods launched from the Defiant. Small capsules carrying the ship's crew, including Captain, flying through the chaos toward the enemy fleet. The pods did not carry weapons. They carried something worse. They carried soldiers. The pods slammed into ships, burning through hull armor with built-in cutters. Hatches opened, and humans poured out, soldiers in armored suits, carrying nothing but hand weapons and fury. This was not how wars were fought in the galaxy. Boarding actions were rare, considered dangerous and inefficient. Why risk soldiers when you could destroy ships from a distance? The humans did not care about efficiency. They cared about winning. On a carrier, security teams responded to the breach. They found a dozen humans cutting their way through the ship, heading for the reactor core. They were larger, stronger, born with natural armor. In straight combat, they should have crushed the humans easily. It was not straight combat. The humans fought with a madness they had never seen. They used grenades that blinded sensors. They fired weapons designed to penetrate armor at point-blank range. When their weapons failed, they used knives. When their knives broke, they used their hands. One soldier cornered a human in a narrow corridor. The human was wounded, bleeding from cuts on his face and arms. His weapon was empty. "Surrender," they said. "You cannot win." The human smiled. Blood stained his teeth. "I'm not trying to win," he said. "I'm trying to hurt you." He pressed something on his belt. The explosion took out half the corridor. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out. Human ships rammed vessels. then launched boarding parties. Human soldiers died by the hundreds, but they kept coming. They fought in corridors and engine rooms and bridges. And they carried bombs. Small nuclear devices designed to be carried by a single person, hidden under their armor. When a boarding team reached a critical system, a reactor, a weapons array, a command center, they would detonate. They began losing ships not to conventional weapons, but to internal explosions. On the Resolve, Commander watched the battle through a haze of smoke and pain. A piece of shrapnel had caught his shoulder, and blood ran down his arm. The ship was dying around him. "Status report," he rasped. Looked up from her console. Her face was burned and one eye was swollen shut. 7 human ships destroyed, including the Defiant, the Steadfast, and the Courage. "But sir, we've taken 23 ships." Stared at her, 23. "The boarding team's there. They're not stopping." On the command ship, Overseer was receiving similar reports. His compound eyes scanned damage assessments that should have been impossible. 23 ships disabled or destroyed, his tactical officer reported. His voice was shaking. "The humans are inside at least 8 more. They're fighting to the last soldier." "This is insane," whispered. "They're throwing their lives away." "Overseer, they don't seem to care about surviving. They care about destroying us." Thought about the human commander's words. "We have nothing to lose. They want to take our home. If we lose everything anyway." He understood now. The humans were not fighting to win. They were fighting to make victory too expensive. They were making the pay for every meter in blood. Another ship flashed on his display, the heavy cruiser Dominance, one of his oldest and most powerful vessels. Internal explosions, reactor breach, total loss. "Order the fleet," said slowly. The words felt like ash in his mouth. "Fall back, retreat to the jump point." His officers stared at him. "Overseer." "We have accomplished nothing here," said. "We have lost half our fleet to 12 ships and a handful of soldiers who fight like wild animals. If we continue, we lose everything." He turned away from the display. "Retreat, now." The fleet began to withdraw. On the Resolve, watched the red dots on her display start moving away from Earth. She blinked, not believing what she was seeing. "Sir," she said, "sir, they're leaving, they are retreating." Looked at the display. The pain in his shoulder seemed distant now. The smoke and fire seemed unreal. "How many ships do we have left?" he asked. 5, sir. The Resolve, the Honor, the Spirit, the Light, and the Hope, all damaged, most barely operational. 5 ships, 7 destroyed, thousands dead. "But they were leaving." "Open a channel," said. "All frequencies, let everyone hear." Nodded and worked her damaged console. Spoke one word, just one, but it would echo across the galaxy. "Enough." He closed his eyes. The word hung in the silence of space, transmitted to every receiver in the system. Earth heard it. Mars heard it. Heard it. And somewhere far away, the Galactic Council heard it too. The battle was over. Humanity had won. But Commander did not see the victory. The blood loss had finally caught up with him. He slumped in his chair and darkness took him. The last thing he heard was voice. "Medical team to the bridge. The commander is down." Then there was nothing. 3 months had passed since the battle. On Earth, people were still recovering. Memorials stood in every city for the fallen. The names of the destroyed ships, Defiant, Steadfast, Courage, Guardian, Shield, Valor, Dawn, were carved into monuments that would stand for centuries. Commander had survived. The doctors had worked for 16 hours to save him, and he had spent 2 months recovering in a hospital inn. His daughter Sora visited him every day after school. She held his hand and told him about her classes, her friends, her dreams. She never asked him about the battle. She did not need to. She knew her father had kept his promise. Now stood on the bridge of a new ship, the Resolve II, named in honor of the vessel he had nearly died on. It was larger than the old ship, better armed, faster. Earth had been busy. Beside him stood Captain, her burns healed into pale scars that she wore with pride. Behind them was a crew of veterans, soldiers who had seen the worst the galaxy could offer and had not blinked. They were on their way to Threshold Station. The Galactic Council had requested a meeting, not demanded, requested. The word choice had not been lost on anyone. "We're approaching the station," said the navigator. Looked out the viewport. Threshold Station hung in the void just as it had before, ancient, massive, indifferent. But something was different now. The station had recognized their ship immediately. Landing permissions had been granted without delay. Escort vessels had moved aside to let them pass. Before, humanity had been a curiosity. Now they were something else. "Landing Bay 3 is ready for us," reported. They've also prepared an honor guard." Raised an eyebrow. "Honor guard?" "Yes, sir. 12 species represented, full formal protocol." Allowed himself a small smile. Then we should not keep them waiting. The resolve II landed smoothly. When the boarding ramp lowered, Ambassador Park was the first to step out. She looked the same as she had 3 months ago, calm, composed, her dark hair pulled back from her face. But there was something different in her eyes now, a hardness that had not been there before. She had watched her species fight and die while she waited helplessly on Earth. She would not forget that. Behind her walked a small group of officers. They wore their dress uniforms, decorated with ribbons and medals that had been created just for this occasion. The Purple Star, for those wounded in defense of Earth. The Solar Cross, for extraordinary courage. The Defiant Medal, named for the ship whose sacrifice had turned the tide of battle. The honor guard stood at attention as they passed. Soldiers from a dozen species, standing in neat rows, their weapons held in formal salutes. The crystal beings, the creatures of light. They all watched as the humans walked by. None of them spoke. None of them needed to. The doors to the assembly chamber opened. Walked in first, just as she had before. But this time there was no laughter, no condescension. The 17 elder species sat in their seats and watched in silence as the human delegation took their place on the central platform. High Arbiter rose from his throne. His crystalline body caught the light, shifting colors as he moved. When he spoke, his voice was different than before, softer, more careful. "Ambassador, the Council, welcomes humanity's return to Threshold Station." Looked up at him. "We are here because you requested our presence. What does the Council want?" Seemed uncomfortable. For a creature made of crystal, that was quite an achievement. "The Council wishes to reassess humanity's status in the galactic community." "No." The word was simple, final. It echoed through the chamber. Paused. "No." Stepped forward. "You do not reassess us. You do not evaluate us. You do not classify us, categorize us, or decide what we are worth." Her voice was steady, but it carried weight that had not been there before. "We have already shown you what we are. We showed you with fire and blood and the bodies of our soldiers. We do not need your approval." The chamber was completely silent. "Then why are you here?" asked. Looked around the chamber. At the delegate who had laughed at her. At the representative whose fleet had attacked Earth. At all the species who had looked at humanity and seen something weak and worthless. "We are here to offer you a choice," she said. She gestured to someone behind her. A young woman stepped forward, the communications officer who had been with at the first meeting. She was carrying a simple wooden box. Opened the box and held it out. Inside was nothing but soil. Brown, ordinary soil from Earth. "This is what we are," said. "Dirt, carbon, water, nothing special, nothing remarkable. We are small and brief and fragile. We break easily. We die easily. Every moment of our existence is a struggle against a universe that does not care if we survive." She reached into the box and took a handful of soil, letting it fall through her fingers. But we do survive, we always have. For 10,000 generations, we have fought against everything that tried to destroy us: disease, disaster, war, our own foolishness. We should have died 100 times, 1,000 times, but here we are, still standing, still fighting, still reaching for the stars. She looked at directly. You called us weak because we have no armor, no venom, no natural weapons. You called us weak because we live only a few decades. But those things are not weaknesses. They are what made us strong, because we know that every day matters, every life is precious, every choice counts. She set the box on the floor of the chamber. So here is your choice. You can be our enemies. You can try to conquer us, control us, protect us from ourselves. And we will fight you. We will fight with everything we have, and we will make you pay a price so high that victory will taste like ashes in your mouths. She paused. Or you can be our friends. You can trade with us, learn from us, work with us. And we will share everything we are, our creativity, our determination, our refusal to accept limits. We will build things together that neither of us could build alone. The chamber remained silent. Descended from his throne, something no high arbiter had done in thousands of years. He walked slowly down the steps until he stood in front of, his crystalline form towering over her. They have filed a formal protest, he said quietly. They lost many ships, many soldiers, they demand compensation. Did not flinch. They attacked our home without cause, they threatened our people, they fired the first shot, they have no right to demand anything. They say you used weapons that violated galactic conventions, mass destruction devices, suicide attacks. We used what we had. We fought how we knew how to fight. We broke no promise because we made no promise. Was silent for a long moment. Then slowly he extended a limb, a gesture of respect that recognized from her studies. The council recognizes Earth, said. His voice was loud enough for the whole chamber to hear. Not as a protectorate, not as a subject species, as equals. A murmur ran through the chamber. Some of it was surprised, some of it was angry, but no one objected, no one dared. Took the offered limb, her grip was firm. Then let us begin, she said. Behind her, Commander watched the moment in silence. He thought about the soldiers who had died, the crews of 7 ships, the boarding teams who had sacrificed themselves, the young men and women who would never come home. They had paid for this moment with their lives. He would make sure it was worth it. Stepped up beside him. Sir, are you all right? Nodded slowly. I was just thinking about the others, the crews, all of them. They would be proud, sir. I hope so. He looked at the chamber, at the aliens who had once called humanity weak. I hope they know what they bought for us. Followed his gaze. They know, sir. Wherever they are, they know. The meeting continued. There were protocols to discuss, treaties to negotiate, relationships to build. It would take years, decades maybe, to fully integrate humanity into the galactic community. But the first step had been taken. Outside the station, stars burned in the endless dark. The same stars that humanity had looked up at for thousands of years, dreaming of the day they would finally reach them. That day had come. And humanity had earned its place not with words but with deeds, not with promises but with proof. The council had called them weak. Humanity had answered. And the galaxy would never forget.